Again, I'm Curt Vandertie, and I represent the Brussels Union Gardner Fire Department as Fire Chief, and I'm also an EMT and emergency medical responder here locally. And about 3 years ago, the Fire Board of Directors appointed a long-range planning committee, and that long-range planning committee involved people like myself, but also representatives from the emergency medical services. We had community members engaged, we had some business owners engaged, we had town leadership from all 3 towns that we serve engaged, and UW Extension actually helped us put together what we needed to do to go through a long-range plan. So we identified our stakeholders and we tried to engage them. Part of the first responsibility of the long-range planning committee was to take a look at our entire operations as a whole. So we looked at our equipment, we looked at our supplies, and when I say equipment, our smallest equipment, such as our pagers and our communication equipment, and up to our larger equipment, which involved our vehicles and our firefighting apparatus. And in addition to that, we evaluated our stations. So we looked at all aspects of the department operations. And one of the things that really stood out from the study and from our evaluation was how deficient our fire stations are. Based on the lack of space for storage, for equipment, we have 0 training capabilities within each of our facilities, meaning we have a garage right now that was built 47 years ago. We have trucks that are crammed in there so tight that we have the inability in some areas to open up the trucks without hitting the truck next to it. We have a lot of our emergency response equipment parked sideways behind our trucks. We have 0 office or abilities to secure any personnel records, so all those things are secured at my house. I have extra supplies and equipment at my house, in my basement, in my garage, etc. So though the facilities have served us well for a long time, it really limits our ability to recruit and retain people. Right now we have 53 volunteers between 2 of our stations, and over 11 of those members are between the age of 50 and 59, and we have 4 that are over the age of 60. So we're expecting a high turnover here in the next couple of years, and our ability to recruit and retain is really going to be key for us for our future. And it's not a problem that we have just here locally, but it's a statewide problem, it's a national problem, identifying volunteer firefighters. What people mostly don't often know is that nearly 80% of all volunteers across the country are volunteer. And that is the most cost-effective way that we can provide a life-saving and property protection service. And so our goal is, when we took a look at the facilities, that's what stood out glaringly in the study. We identified that as far as firefighting equipment and supplies and the tools that we have, our personnel right now for the most part is where we need to be. But our facilities have some major health and safety issues. We have no vehicle exhaust system. You can put your finger just about anywhere you want and it'll be black when you wipe it on anything. And long-term health safety effects is, over the years, it's taught us all that those carcinogens, though they don't have an immediate impact, they have a long-term effect on cancer, especially what they found over the years with our firefighters, not just ours personally, but across the country. So with that being said, the facilities being the most efficient thing that stood out, that's when we started to identify how do we further evaluate the stations to determine our needs. And so we worked with an organization called Keller Structure and Design. We initially put out a request for proposal to a number of different organizations, and they came back and had the cheapest price. And they were able to provide us what we needed at the cheapest cost, so therefore they were selected. And they've worked with us over the course of 3 years. Identifying a needs assessment, evaluating our facilities and what we would need to do to meet the needs of our storage, of our equipment, supplies, training, etc., and certainly space for our equipment and our emergency response tools that we have. So what that means is, as of November 4th, the referendum that we have on the ballot involves our facilities, and that is replacing the one facility that's located here in Brussels on County DK and relocating it to County C near the highway. And without to go into a lot of details, we worked with the Door County Planning Department and our dispatch center, and we looked at different maps where our call volumes were, where our demographics were, how do we cover the most people and the biggest areas possible, and that location was picked time and time and time again with all the different elements that we looked at. So That's how that selection was located. The second part of this referendum is to add on and remodel our Station 2, which is located on North Stevenson Pier Road in the Township of Gardner. And that would involve us adding on space for our equipment, but also providing them some space for training and having meetings and conducting day-to-day operations as far as it relates to our business. With all of that said, from the very beginning, one of the key elements to our long-range planning was how do we secure the only ambulance that we have here in the southern part of Door County. Over 30 years ago, our local community did fundraising events to buy our first ambulance, and it was known as South County Rescue at the time, and it was local people that supported it. And I remember as a young kid going through the Belgian Days Parade, seeing these volunteers going through with little floats and trying to raise money. They ultimately raised money, got their first ambulance. Over time, Door County Emergency Services was formed, and they ultimately took over South County Rescue. It made sense to consolidate services to be able to manage and pull together all those resources, from training to protocols to equipment, etc. So Door County EMS took over the service, but always maintained the ambulance locally. In 2012, there was an independent study done of an evaluation of all of Door County Emergency Services, and a couple of things that stood out from the study was the lack of personnel and a lack of facilities in southern Door County. And the recommendation was ultimately made to relocate the ambulance to Sturgeon Bay. At that time, all of the town leaders and people like myself and local crew chiefs like Beverly Wadier, we reached out to Door County, obviously urging them not to go ahead with what the recommendation had said. The county board ultimately agreed, and we've left the ambulance, or they left the ambulance here in southern Door County. However, Door County signed a resolution in spring committing to keeping the ambulance here locally in southern Door County, with the understanding that we would move forward with a joint building project. However, for that to occur, we need a successful referendum vote. And what's unique about our project is that we need a yes vote majority in every individual town. Because we're not the taxing agency, we aren't the taxing agency, we simply can't ask for a referendum for BUG, Brussels Union Gardner Fire Department. Each individual town needs to pass. So it's a little bit unique in that regard compared to, say, the school. They have a complete school district, and they need majority of the school district. We need majority of each individual town. What that means with the county, though, going back to that, is Door County understands the value of having an ambulance locally. However, they're challenged with how do you staff the ambulance, and how do we get EMTs to staff the ambulance when they have no facilities to train in or stay in. Right now the rule is within 5 minutes, every EMT needs to be within 5 minutes from the fire station when they're on duty. And so when they get paged out, they'll respond to the station, they'll get into the ambulance and then respond to the call. We have EMTs that have been doing this for over 30 years. They're going to be retiring soon, and those EMTs that have been doing it that long are some of our most active EMTs. And just like the fire department, the most difficult times to staff is during the day, because people have other jobs. These are not their full-time jobs. So the county signed a resolution, and really the great thing about it is that the county board was 100% unanimous. They have 21 supervisors from Washington Island all the way down through the Township of Union, and 21 of them voted in support of doing a joint building project. Now we have to get our part done, and our part is to get a successful referendum. And the county has signed the resolution to demonstrate their commitment to keeping the ambulance local. However, they also put a sunset date of 2 years. And so when the the resolution was signed in spring, as of November, we have a year and a half left on that commitment. And what that means is that they would actually pay for the portion, their cost for the construction cost of their facility, of their portion of the facility. And then they would also agree to pay their annual maintenance portion, and sign a 50-year agreement with us to keep the ambulance locally, and they would continue to pay that annual maintenance fee for the next 50 years. So the concern that we had a couple of years ago with their study, this secures the future of our ambulance. Also, in addition to the fire department and the ambulance, we have what's called emergency medical responders. And those are the people that respond directly to a scene, no matter where they are. If they're at their house, if they're down the road, their pager goes off, they get the location of the call and the circumstance, and they'll respond directly to the scene to start administering whatever treatment they can. today they have no space. They have no dedicated area. Their equipment and supplies are also kept at the crew chief's houses. They have no place to go to a station to debrief a call. Unfortunately, not all calls we go to is a false alarm. We go to some pretty traumatic calls, whether they be motor vehicle accidents, house fires, people trapped in farm machinery. We had them all. And when you respond to those calls, you fight through it because your training kicks in, but it's afterwards that they really affect people emotionally. And we want to make sure that our emergency medical responders have that same ability. They need to have a space to go back to the station where they can debrief with their fellow responders, with their fellow firefighters, and oftentimes it's talking through it that helps them through those circumstances. So really, this project brings everyone under one roof, because in addition to the ambulance, the county is also willing to provide space for other county offices such as human services, which in our area is important, because if people are struggling or need that human service response, rather than going to the Sturgeon Bay office, they can have those services, which we all pay for today as taxpayers, but have that service right here local in their community. In addition, the Sheriff's Department would have a single office in this building, and that would be, again, also allow local people, without having to drive to Sturgeon Bay, to meet an officer locally here. And some people will say, well, why is that important?
It's hugely important.
There's a lot of times people don't want an officer or a squad car to pull into their yard. Maybe it's a sensitive issue, maybe it's a problem with their neighbor, whatever the case might be. It may be something as simple as interviewing a witness or a victim. And if we can make that resource easier, have access to that law enforcement to provide that service, again, these are services we all pay for today as taxpayers of the county. But it's an opportunity to bring those services locally. And it's not a unique model, because up in Sister Bay, a model exists in northern Door County. When Sister Bay Fire Department built their new station 10 years ago, they have a fire station, they have their emergency medical responders, they have the Door County ambulance, they have a regular general Door County office, which Human Services, I believe even some people from the senior center utilize that site. And then they have a single Sheriff's Department office. And it's been very well received. It works out very well for them. And this is an opportunity to bring that similar model and functionality here into southern Door County. So there's a lot that's involved in this referendum. There's a lot riding on the referendum, because the security of our ambulance, we basically have the opportunity to complete a project where, in today's times, interest rates are at an all-time low. Construction costs continue to rise each year. The ambulance, to secure that locally, we have an opportunity to secure that with a 50-year agreement. The county is willing to fund that portion from their construction cost and their ability to create that portion of the building, plus pay the annual maintenance share for the next 50 years. So it is a costly project. We all wish that we could accomplish this without it costing anything. Unfortunately, it's not realistic. We've worked with Keller Design, again, nearly 3 years. We've gone through 11 revisions of our plans. We've cut over 4,100 square feet total from the project, and we feel that we've made the cuts that won't jeopardize the functionality of the facility. And if we need to expand in the future, then I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But we've pretty much eliminated the majority of the space that had been put into it for future, knowing that we needed to cut costs, in the best way, or the easiest way, or most effective way to cut the cost, unfortunately, is cutting square footage. So it is a much bigger building that we have today, there's no doubt about it. But it's a building that we believe that we need, that we'll use on day one. When we walk into it the first time, the majority of that space is going to be utilized. And the cost itself really is, it comes down to $84 per $100,000 in property value, and works out to be about 23 cents a day. And we're hoping that people will put that into perspective. Again, it's a shared cost between 3 towns, so no one town or no one individual is paying the full price of the project. And what it really does is it secures the future for not only our fire services, but our ambulance, our first responders. It brings county services locally. These are facilities that the community will see every day. They're going to be part of our communities for a very long time. And we just sincerely and wholeheartedly ask for people to see the big picture and to support us. I believe we do have a lot of support. But with anything, we all see the elections, we all see the commercials, we all hear the radio ads, and it is challenging. So we've worked really hard. This frequently asked questions document is 13 pages long. It answers just about any question I think that anyone would have. It's on our website as well. We have an informational video that's 10 minutes long on our website. We have tax information, we have financial information, we have pretty much everything broken out at bugfiredepartment.com. So that's hopefully been a good tool for people.